The first question is serum bilirubin levels at which exchange transfusion should be started. And the second question is what is the indication for phenobarbital in hyperbilirubinemia?
All right. I think there are very standard recommendations for exchange transfusion. There have been some controversies whether you should have different levels for breastfed babies and so on. At the present moment, I would like to clearly state that we do not have enough scientific evidence to make any changes in the existing recommendation. So therefore, as a general rule, I think as a rule of the thumb, which you will see in any standard textbook, of course it depends on the weight of the baby, it depends on the age of the baby and other associated risk factors that would decide whether you have to do exchange at lower levels. But as a general rule that obviously any baby who's going to cross a bilirubin of more than 10 in the first 24 hours, anybody is going to be beyond 15 at 48 hours, any baby beyond 20, no matter what the age, needs an exchange transfusion. This is very standard. So my simple message to each one of you is don't get bogged down with controversies. We don't have enough scientific evidence to make changes at the moment, so we should follow standard textbook recommendation at the moment. With regard to the second question, that's phenobarbital. I think the first thing we must remember is this phenobarb, when given, is going to take time. It's not therefore very useful in acute conditions. It's not going to bring down bilirubins rapidly. At the present moment, probably the only condition where it has a use is of a very rare condition, and that's Crigler-Najjar syndrome. I'm sure you all know, where there is a partial or complete deficiency of the enzyme systems that are needed for glucuronidation. And phenobarbs have been very useful in these conditions because it keeps kind of stimulating the microsomal enzymes. And present moment, probably that's the only real indication for its use, but this is a very rare condition. So in routine clinical practice, most of us probably never really use phenobarb to bring down bilirubins.
Thank you, Dr. Ranji. We have two other questions which I would like Dr. Salan to answer. First is what are the causes of convulsions in the newborn? And the second question is what is the diagnosis and management of tetany in a newborn?
Yes, there are a large number of causes of convulsions in newborn, and one can refer to the textbook also. But the most important ones which one always keeps in mind is whether the baby has got some central nervous system infection, or the patient has got some metabolic diseases or problems like hypoglycemia, hypocalcemia, hypomagnesemia, or the patient has, the mother has been given some drugs before, or there is a deficiency of pyridoxine or dependency of pyridoxine, which may cause convulsions in the baby. So a quick look at the baby is going to decide about it, whether he has got CNS infection, because if there is a history of lethargy, poor feeding, convulsions, AF is full, or there is tonicity is increased of the baby, plus of course the temperature, that will, they will all take you to a lead to towards CNS infection. Plus of course if these are missing, then of course metabolic convulsions have to be kept in mind, and a quick estimation of the say the glucose, serum glucose, and the calcium or magnesium facilities being available, one can easily go ahead with it. But the management of convulsions in these babies must start right in the very beginning, because every episode of convulsion is likely to cause damage to the CNS and may cause some ultimate defect. Now, as far as tetany is concerned, I think we can easily recognize them. The tetany as such may not, the calcium deficiency or the low calcium, ionic calcium levels in the blood may not be, the symptomatology may not be as that of an adult, because the in cases of newborns, they may come up with the frank convulsions. Now, these convulsions are often associated with some choking of the respiration, some laryngeal spasm associated, and that can be recognized. Plus, of course, there are certain tests which clinical tests which can give us some indication of that the patient may have some calcium deficiency. Another thing which need to be differentiated between tetany is that of a tetanus. So that is another important part of convulsions which the patient will come up with. The absence of the spasm of the jaw muscles, the trismus, will differentiate, plus of course the provocation of spasm by stimulation to the baby will differentiate between tetany and with the tetanus or other forms of convulsions. So they must be looked into and treated accordingly.
Thank you, Dr. Salan. There is one question on what are the causes of hypotonia in the newborn. Dr. Datta, could you elaborate on them?
Now, there are few causes of hypotonia which are seen in newborn babies. One of the most important cause of hypotonia you would find in hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. That means if a baby is asphyxiated and then he develops some injury to the brain and leading to either hypoxia and lack of perfusion in the brain, and which can lead to hypotonia. Another cause which can give rise to hypotonia is if you find that the baby is having bilirubin encephalopathy, in which there can be hypotonia. In addition, if there are any cause where there is a gross congenital anomalies of the central nervous system, as for example if there is an anencephaly, if there is a big hydrocephalus, all those conditions which can give rise to a hypotonic child. Apart from that, you can find hypotonia in extremely preterm babies, and which is possibly one of the most important cause of hypotonia. The more the period of gestation, you will find that the tone increases, and therefore in very small preterm babies you will find that there would be hypotonia. In addition, you can find that hypotonia in very rare central nervous diseases of the nervous system, and which is an absolutely hypotonia, and you will find that there will be problem in the respiration also, and that is very rarity, that is Wernicke-Hoffmann's disease. So these are some of the causes of hypotonia which are seen in newborn babies.
The last question is a very interesting question, and that is what are the contraindications for breastfeeding? Dr. Datta.
I shall like to give this important message to all of you, that there are no absolute contraindications for breastfeeding a baby. Rarely if you find that those who are given as a contraindication, these are not practical, and these situations are very, very rare. As for example, I will give you an example. It's always written that the baby of a mother who is suffering from cancer, or a baby of a mother who is taking anti-cancerous drugs, these are a situation where first of all the baby will not be there. Most of the conditions in which the delivery itself will not be there, and there will be very minimum few cases where such conditions would exist. The second condition, where mostly usually in earlier textbooks as well as this is a misconception, that if a mother is suffering from tuberculosis, the baby should not be breastfed. This is just a misconception, this is a myth, because the tubercle bacilli is neither excreted in the milk and you can easily give it. The other condition where some apprehension is there with some of the mothers and some of the physicians and even the pediatricians is that if mother is suffering from hepatitis, and then whether the milk should be given or not. There is again no contraindication. With the nowadays, with the availability of the hepatitis B vaccine, you give the vaccine and feed the baby as long as you can. There is no problem at all. Another conditions where there has been much debate and apprehension is if mother is suffering from HIV and AIDS disease. In such a situation, what has to be done? Now there are a lot of controversies on this. WHO initially used to say that in developing countries of the world, taking into consideration the infant mortality because of the lack of breastfeeding, you should continue it. Nowadays, the recommendation is that you must explain to the mother the risk of giving breastfeeding and the development of HIV and AIDS, and taking into an informed consent, you must advise that the breastfeeding should be continued. And I would not like to go into a debate and open the whole box of Pandora box regarding this particular issue. Only message I would like to give to you that there are hardly any conditions where there is absolute contraindication of breastfeeding, including HIV and AIDS, for which you give a informed consent, take an informed consent from the mother, and accordingly you breastfeed the baby.